This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Tonight on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, series premiere tonight on NBC.
HR tech, work tech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the Work Tech Podcast. Join host George Larocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work-Defined Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Work Tech. I'm George Larocque, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. A topic that's near and dear to my background and my passion is, predicting the success of any given person in any given role. And it's become more challenging than ever as the onslaught of technical skills, everything's changing so much faster that we can't really depend just on what the industry has called, hard skills. And so I've got CEO and co-founder of Plum, Caitlin MacGregor, here to tell us about Plum's human-centric and holistic approach to skills and how it's impacting key success metrics for employers globally. She's also introduced me to a new term for what people like to call soft skills, which I'm not a big fan of that term, soft skills. And I think this new vernacular is a huge service for the industry, and I'm excited for her to tell us all about it. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and for this conversation.
Cool. So before we dig in on Plum, for anyone that hasn't listened to any of our conversations before, can you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little about you and Plum?
So my name is Caitlin MacGregor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum, and we're a platform that helps primarily enterprise organizations really understand the human behind the work, understand what makes somebody perform best and stay longest in their roles. And so we're used for very top of the funnel, who you screen in to interview in your hiring process, to internally, who are you shortlisting to look at for internal mobility or succession planning or identifying future leadership. And all of our data is given to the individual so that people can have better understanding of their strengths and what makes them exceptional and what areas they should really have a personalized development plan around. And so really taking kind of this outdated legacy industry of psychometric assessments, of assessing people's what historically has been soft skills, and being able to scale it across the entire employee life cycle so that you have data on every single candidate and every single person, and how they're going to be set up for success in their roles and outperform their peers and stay longer in roles, providing that data to make better talent decisions across the employee life cycle.
Yeah, I get excited when I, talk to someone that's implemented Plum and, can talk about, the changes that it's made and the speed to implement and get to success with Plum, because I've seen, in my career, I've seen this approach work really well when it's done correctly. It's just that it took so long with change management and, you had to have IOs involved before, during, post. Not that I'm against IOs being engaged in the process, but just the time and the change management. So I know we'll get into some of that, but let's back up. Everyone loves a good backstory. What led you to create Plum, and sort of like what's Plum's why, and what led you to this place?
So I had built 2 businesses for other people before starting Plum. The second business was an ed tech business. It was to help students with learning disabilities succeed by using technology to help kind of allow their strengths to shine and to create compensatory strategies for areas where they needed assistance. And it's interesting because that was kind of my first understanding of the power of having a psychological profile for an individual. And once you have that data, how you can really optimize their performance. And our job was to help students K through 12 really understand their IEPs, individual educational plans, to be able to then understand the psychology behind their learning. At the same time, I was hired to go down to New Hampshire and start up the US branch of this Canadian ed tech company. And I went to make my first hire, and my executive coach said that if I screwed that up, it'd be a loss of $300,000 on the business. So not wanting to make that mistake, he had developed a psychometric assessment. So an assessment to test personality and cognitive ability that we could use on every single applicant. Now, it was a really expensive consulting service, but we were able to have similar psychological profiles on every candidate. And that was where I got to see, out of 80 applicants, 2 candidates stood out for different reasons. One was perfect on paper. So he had a master's in education, 5 years of relevant work experience, easily out of the 80 applicants, he was stacked, at the very top. And my CEO back in Canada was drooling. He was the golden boy by every measure. But the assessment showed that from a behavioral fit perspective, he wasn't going to be somebody that was going to perform well in the role.
Have you ever been to a webinar where the topic was great, but there wasn't enough time to ask questions or have a dialogue to learn more? Well, welcome to HR and Payroll 2.0, the podcast where those post-webinar questions become episodes. We feature HR practitioners, leaders, and founders of HR, payroll, and workplace innovation and transformation, sharing their insights and lessons learned from the trenches. We dig in to share the knowledge and tips that can help modern HR and payroll leaders navigate the challenges and opportunities ahead. So join us.
And then I had somebody else who scored in the top 3rd percentile of the entire workforce for their overall productivity. My executive coach said statistically she was 1 in 1,000. I'd be an idiot not to hire her. And so I ended up, running an experiment and hiring the perfect person on paper and the person with the highest assessment scores. And 3 months later, the woman was doing all of her work plus his. He was only doing 10% of his work, so he was let go. And within a year and a half, the woman had replaced me as acting president while I went on maternity leave. And the punchline is that she had 2 art degrees. Her only work experience had been 7 years of waitressing, and she didn't know how to use Excel. So if I had relied on a resume, there's no way I would have shortlisted her to interview her, let alone hired her. And we had that experience for the next 3 years. 17-year-old high school student who worked 20 hours a week, outperforming somebody making over $100,000. Person that dropped out of college to join the circus. And so we hired an ex-carny to be our top customer success manager. Just these incredible diamonds in the rough. And after 3 years of seeing that there's real data and that really understanding that there's an entire science. People go to school, get their PhDs in industrial organizational psychology. It's a real proven field of science. And realizing that the limitation had been that you could only access this predictive data through really expensive, time-consuming consultants. And so there was an opportunity to democratize access to this highly predictive data by taking it out of the hands of consultants and turning it into software as a service and allowing the platform to really scale the data. And that's what we set out to do. And it's been a decade of getting the science right, getting the user experience right, and then figuring out how to scale it at the enterprise level across not just talent acquisition where we started, but in talent management as well. One universal data set across the entire life cycle.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love hearing that story, especially those examples. So there was the sort of Plum story from a product perspective, a science perspective, but as you've been on this journey, did any of your, I'm just curious about learnings, like as entrepreneurs, like, a lot we make certain assumptions when we start going to market. Did anything really stand out as far as not being exactly what you expected or being completely different?
I think there's been a lot of lessons along the way. One is, I think because we had started kind of understanding students, with learning disabilities, their profiles, the importance of making the data intuitive. When you talk to a kid about what makes them exceptional and where they're going to need support, it can't be lost in ivory tower language. I remember the first few years we were talking about terms like intellectual disposition and orderliness. And, part of figuring out how to disrupt this legacy space is how do you make the data so that, a 10-year-old would understand the results. So we had this unique perspective of how to make this data really understandable and intuitive. And because we started with SMBs, there was this concept of it has to scale. We're never going to be able to support hundreds and thousands of SMBs. So how do you scale it? So I think we learned that we had this unique perspective of intuitive, user-centric experience and this hands-off scalability that allowed us to enter the market from just a very different perspective. At the same time, there's a lot of noise, which I feel bad about for, HR buyers, is that you have so much noise. How do you really understand how one product differentiates from another? And, there are a lot of options for, behavioral type of assessments at the SMB space, Wonderlook or Predictive Index or Criteria Corp, that's where they primarily play, is in this SMB and mid-market space. But when you look at the enterprise space, that's where you have SHL and Hogan and Aon Hewitt, which really are more like services-based companies with some tech enablement. So we had to realize that we had this unique advantage where we could really be a tech platform and scale, but still beat them on the science front. It took a long time to kind of get the credibility and the science right, as well as the scalability and user experience. But once we had all those components, we realized that we could move up market to enterprise and compete against these, really like 30-year-old products that don't look like they were built for 2024, 2025 at all. So for us, it was about figuring out where we could really own the leader position in the space. And enterprise is hard when you are a smaller company, but it's something that we uniquely can do. So it was a big lesson of getting the product right for an SMB mid-market, but then moving into enterprise and owning and leading that space.
Okay, that's interesting. I think you're being generous with 30 years. I know I used some of those products 30 years ago, and they were around for a while at that point. I won't call anybody out, but it really is. I mean, on one hand, it speaks to how long the science has been in the space, but the experience is what really is a shame that it wasn't changing and hasn't changed much.
And I think that's a bit of an understanding of kind of more modern times, is just the importance of, if the individual candidate and if the individual employee doesn't benefit from the experience, then it's a non-starter to begin with. So we have a 93% completion rate because we focused on how do we give value back to the individual. GDPR was actually great for this because our argument from the beginning was that the individual should own their own profile, that they own their own data. And then it just helped us enforce that to everybody else, because they're like, of course people own their own data. But that wasn't the trend a decade ago. So, right. I think that really recognizing that the individual owns their own personality. The individual owns their own ability to be successful throughout their career, regardless of the job title. So how do we create an experience that benefits them first and helps them in their development and in their career journey? And then once they have benefited, how do we get the employer to then leverage that to put the person in the right role, to set the person up for success, to personalize their development? So I think that perspective of kind of creating a consumer grade experience first just wasn't in the thinking. When you talk to industrial organizational psychologists, it was really like, how do we get the highest level of accuracy in the science? Well, the highest level of accuracy is put somebody in a room for a day with an individual psychologist. I was taking the train into Toronto the other day, and I had somebody sitting 2 seats ahead of me talking on the phone really loud about how he was going in to spend 3 hours to be interviewed by a psychologist. That's great. That's going to be accurate. That's going to be really helpful information. But that is not scalable. And so what's happened is that companies have taken other methods that are more scalable, but not nearly as accurate. And so it's about how do you find that perfect balance point between the highest level of accuracy, but it's usable and everybody wants to do it, and there isn't friction to adopt it. And so I think that prior attempts really just focused over rotated on the science and forgot about the adoption and the usability, which is so critical for this data to be useful.
Yeah. And let's zoom in there and maybe talk a little bit about, that experience on both sides. I think that, when you talk about, when I mentioned, human-centric and, it's not just like an email to the candidate or employee saying, here's your profile. There's more benefit given to them. And then also how do you deliver this at the enterprise? So a little bit of the how, I guess, on both fronts.
Yeah. So, we talked about a little bit at the beginning when you talked about the intro. I want to bring in this term just so that we can start to, think about things a little bit differently, because that's really where it starts.
When your investors, customers, and workers demand more from your business, make it happen with SAP. The AI-powered capabilities of SAP can help you streamline costs, connect with new suppliers, and manage payroll, even when your business is being pulled in different directions. To deliver a quality product at a fair price while paying your people what they're worth too, so your business can stay unfazed. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
Is that, what data are we prioritizing? Because right now, when somebody applies for the job, it feels a little bit like an exercise of checklists. You get the job description, and AI now is coming up with a checklist of inferred skills based on that job description. This is the status quo right now with most companies who are using some form of ATS. There's this checklist of these are all the things that you're looking for in that job description. When somebody applies for a job right now, there's some sort of, looking at that resume and pulling out all of these keywords and inferred keywords, and you stack rank, the hundreds and thousands of people that have applied basically based on who has the most checklists checked. And the more checklists you have, the higher you are at the top. And so the more you've optimized your resume for the checklist, the more you're likely to get into that top 5 or 10% and get moved on to that structured interview. The problem is that 80% of job descriptions ask for communication skills. 100% of people say that they have communication skills. So then we go to, okay, well, 6 years ago, if it was a technical, software developer job, most job descriptions would say, I want somebody with Ruby on Rails. And it was an elite, type of coding skill that not everybody had. Somebody with 3 years of Ruby on Rails would be stack ranked right at the top. And so Ruby on Rails people 6 years ago would be at the top and they'd get the interview. And there weren't enough of them on the market. Now, nobody cares at all if you have Ruby on Rails on your resume. It's completely outdated. It's irrelevant unless you're trying to keep some legacy, piece of software alive. So it's about, first of all, looking at what is actually predictive of performance. And the data is crystal clear that it's not past education, it's not past experience. They can tell you if you're eligible, but they will not predict performance. If you want to look at performance, it comes down to your cognitive ability, so your ability to solve problems, brand new problems, your ability to have social intelligence and solve people problems, and your personality, the behaviors that actually energize you and that come naturally and that you will excel at better than your peers if given the opportunity to use those, like innovation, like adaptability, like execution. If you are in a job where you need to, be very detail oriented and check off a lot of to-do lists, then you want somebody high with execution. If you want somebody coming up with out of the box ideas, then you want somebody with innovation. But most people don't have the self-awareness to understand even what makes them exceptional. And we definitely don't have a way at scale that you see in most job application processes where it's verified that that person actually is exceptional and has those natural innate abilities. And what now I think we need to be really thinking about this is forget about soft skills, forget about the outdated term soft skills. What we're seeing in the K through 12 industry is that they've really latched onto the term durable skills. There's a recognition that over the lifetime of somebody's career, especially as AI takes over a lot of the mundane tasks, what's left are these really human tasks that are required for us to do as workers. It's going to be our transferable, durable skills that are going to outlast and be relevant throughout our career versus these perishable skills like Ruby on Rails, even Excel. It's amazing right now how you can leverage ChatGPT or generative AI to be a master in Excel now. You don't need to know the formulas. You just need to know the prompts and you need to know the ways to automate it. You don't have to know how to code anymore. You can tell the computer now what you want and it will code for you. And if you do know how to code, your ability to code can be 10 times more than your peer if you're leveraging generative AI and they're not. So it comes down now to, your innovation, your adaptability, your teamwork ability, your conflict resolution. It is these durable skills that predict performance. So back to your question about Plum, it's about prioritizing durable skills as the first data to decide when you're stack ranking either your candidates or you're stack ranking internally for succession planning or internal mobility. Are we aligning the durable skills that are needed for success in the role with the durable skills that are innate and come naturally to that person? Because that data, when you align somebody's behaviors to the behavioral needs of the job, that data is 4 times more accurate than a resume at predicting on the job performance and retention. So you want to avoid burnout, you want to increase productivity, look at who are the people that naturally have those talents, those durable skills first. Then once you have your short list, then start looking at eligibility. Okay, this person is a 95 match and they have, communication, execution, and teamwork and conflict resolution and adaptability. Awesome. Now, this person who's a 95 may only have 3 years of experience, but this person with 10 years of experience may only have a 40 match. Statistically, you are better off to bring in that 95 for the job interview that has the 3 years of experience over the person with 10 years of experience that has only a 40 match. So it's about looking at the data differently, and it starts with prioritizing what predicts performance and retention, and that's the durable skills.
I love the term durable skills, and not just because I hate soft skills, but I think, the soft skills phrase, which everybody seemed to lean in on, really almost diminished the importance of those skills. And this isn't a market trend. That the world has changed around us quickly over the last couple of years, and now you're spot on. The C-suite is talking about agility and ability to learn, and the ability to be creative. And I just saw an incredible video yesterday from Mo Godot about how really it's going to be all about our ability to be human and our ability to leverage these tools with all sorts of historical citations around every innovation, how that's where we had to go to get to the next place. So I think I love durable skills. And when I saw you present this, a couple of weeks ago, for me, words matter a lot. And when I heard you mention durable skills and your shift after hearing that, and that resonated with me as much as everything you were talking about around how you're enabling this for employers. So I'll do everything I can to help that that term take off. But I have a feeling it's going to happen on its own, to your point, given what's happening in ed tech and the education environment, and just what the world has changed. And I think I'm excited about the fact that this shift is happening. It's not just because it's the right thing to do or because we have data, but it's that we're being led to this place by these changes. So I have to ask you about AI, because we can't have conversations without talking. We've talked about AI in the market context here, but how does AI come into play within your platform? And because that's something that everybody's wondering with every product.
Yeah, I think it comes down to scalability and customization. So, what's really cool is I don't always talk about this part, but we launched a new culture product in the spring, in May. And it's actually a product that we had 6 years ago, but we couldn't scale it 6 years ago. And AI has really allowed us to now scale it in a way that wasn't possible before. And this has kind of been a major unlock for us. So, what I love about our product evolution is that it always starts with our customers. We started in talent acquisition, and the reason we moved to talent management is that our customers kept shoehorning our product, being like, hey, if I can use this on candidates, can I use it internally on my people too? And we're like, sure. And then we're like, okay, maybe we should build something purpose-built for their employees since that was so successful. Well, it kind of happened the same way with culture, where people kept asking us about culture, and we knew that it was really important to not talk about culture in the framing of hiring for culture. That's a big no-no, and we can go down that rabbit hole of why, but culture is an X multiplier in terms of if you have the right people in the right seats, and then they have this environment that is supporting them and is aligned to their success, then you can accomplish so much more.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
And we knew that there is this realization by executives that culture is an important ingredient in the success of companies. So we had created this product to be able to assess where is your current company culture, but more importantly, where do you ideally want it to be? Again, democratize culture by getting every employee in just 7 minutes to tell you where there is buy-in towards your future strategy, or where there's friction and where you may need to do the change management. But at the time, we would have to, I remember flying to Germany to present the culture results to Volkswagen. And we were a small team, and I'm like, I can't fly around the world to present these results to executive teams. Well, now with Zoom, we don't have to, fly to talk to every audience. Another big problem that they had was, well, how do I talk about it in the language, the cultural framework that already exists in our company? And we're like, we're a software as a service platform. We can't customize every result to be our customer's language. Well, actually, that's what AI is fantastic at. How do you take one linguistical framework and translate it to somebody else's? And so it allows us to scale the results in the language that is most relevant to the company. It allows us to also, the problem is that the most important thing with culture, taking a step back, is, right now, because of AI, every enterprise company that we talk to, their executive teams are under enormous pressure to come up with a new strategy to transform their business. They recognize because AI is impacting their company, they can't keep doing the same thing that they've been doing for the last 5-10 years. They need a new strategy to usher them into the future. Well, that's great. Your business is going in this direction. You want a new strategy to take it in that direction. We have a healthcare company that we work with that already is using our platform for all their employees and all of their candidates. But we went to them and said, you have a $2 billion transformation strategy. What data do you have on your culture to tell you that your culture is aligned to the new strategy? And they're like, we don't have time for that. Because normally, if you want to measure culture, you're bringing in a consulting firm that's going to interview a whole bunch of people over 6 months and then give you a PowerPoint that you can't implement or create change from. So we were like, in 7 minutes, we can give you the data to help you identify where you have alignment and buy-in internally, where everyone's already rowing in the same direction of your new strategy, and where you have friction and people are not aligned and there's going to be resistance, so you can pinpoint the areas where you need to focus. And this has been like game changing, because the areas where often things are scapegoated, like, oh, it's the Gen X or the Gen Z or the millennials, or it's people that have been here for 10 years versus the newcomers, or it's this region or it's that department. We're able to kind of get data on where actually the problems exist and where they don't need to focus a lot of energy because there's already buy-in. That's something you can leverage to say, we're all similar and on board here. These are the differences we need to work on. This is where we need to get alignment. But now with AI, we're able to just scale the results, but also we didn't have talent management 6 years ago. We didn't have the data on the individual employees. And that's where all of this becomes actionable, is how can we recognize, for example, with this healthcare company, they're going through a massive merger of bringing two departments that typically were almost adversarial and competitive against each other and one-upping each other. Now they're one department and they need to work together as one. And so we're able to identify that culturally they want to act as one team, but they have some work to do to create that, to grow that new muscle. Because we have data on the individual employees, we can actually look at which executives are naturally, get out of bed in the morning and think about solving problems through the lens of teamwork. They naturally believe that two heads are better than one. So we can identify the executives that are going to build bridges with their new counterparts as fast as possible, because that's what they naturally excel in. We can look at the managers, same thing, that excel in teamwork. And then we can find the individual contributors that you can then put on a task force where they can be in charge of helping to create more teamwork amongst their peers. And so it's being able to connect that macro, cultural strategy with the micro individuals that can action it, and really that concept of being early adopters. How do you find the early adopters within your organization that can then champion the change, show success, to then make everybody else more comfortable? And that's kind of a part of AI too, is that everyone's waiting to see where are the opportunities, where are the successes. And it's not always about, hey, who are the people most innovative that can adopt generative AI and show the new use cases, which is a great application. Sometimes it's, we need to build a stronger teamwork muscle. Who are the individuals to help us do that as we navigate all the change in our organization? And so AI is allowing us to scale our product, to personalize some of the results so that the individual can see, how do I show up versus where my company needs me to show up? What are those development opportunities in the language that the company is already using? So the long answer to scale is the short answer.
Well, but it's really insightful, and it makes total sense how the shift that's happening in the market to these more durable skills then aligns into the cultural shift that's happening to us, and it's, I like to say, this is either happening, this whole thing is either happening to us or through us. So you're enabling the organizations to be more of a conduit of change in a positive way. I've done a lot of work on culture over the years, and a lot of the, there are a few types of tools that folks would use, but it was, survey tools that gave you like a moment in time and really, really difficult to put into action with any analytics. And then a lot of the consulting and, the types of offerings that you've mentioned, a lot of really complex, like organizational network analysis, digging into hubs and connectors and sentiment. But this is very actionable, and because it's connected to these skills and connected to the direction of the business. And it dovetails right out of hiring and talent management. So that's exciting. That's an exciting development for Plum. So with just a little bit of time left, I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about things from a market perspective and where Plum is headed. So what does the future look like based on what you're seeing in the market today?
I think one of the greatest opportunities is that there's real motivation for different players in the market to cooperate and work more closely together. I think there's this recognition that, our customers want.
The pace of change in the world of business is fast, and that drives incredible complexity for the world of human resources.
Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, a series of conversations with experts inside and outside the world of HR on how to innovate, measure, and evolve our practices.
Our goal is to help provide you with practical examples of how HR has to change to meet the complexity of the business environment.
Every week, we'll talk to new and different voices on all aspects of HR.
And at times, we'll get irreverent.
Silly even.
And sometimes geek out on the data and technology that underlie the processes that drive the world of HR.
But the conversations are always insightful and fun. So please, enjoy the HR Data Labs podcast.
To easily use a bunch of different tools together, but it's on the vendors to make that experience seamless and easy for them. So I think that partnerships are really starting to explode in a great way that benefits the different vendors, but also benefits our shared customer. And so, we really invested in a partnership strategy just over a year ago, and we're just scratching the surface of the potential there. And it's been amazing to work with really, wide range of different partners because we touch so many different aspects of that employee lifecycle. There's so many partnership opportunities. And so we see that as a massive opportunity when I think about 2025 is really doubling down on what we're doing with partners. I think the other opportunity is I think we're just scratching the surface and what we can do with culture and how we can be at the forefront of transformation. I also think there's an opportunity for HR to recognize that as the business is trying to implement their new strategy, HR is one of the most strategic parts of that equation, helping the organization transform, helping the organization, really navigate this next phase of their business as AI impacts every element of their business. This isn't just an IT or operations endeavor. I think HR in some of the best organizations are really owning the transformation. So I think it's really exciting. And I think we're seeing new titles and new departments pop up and new roles for HR to play. So I'm really, really looking forward to kind of learning more and seeing how this whole transformation space plays. I mean, I think 5 years ago, transformation was just a digital transformation. How do we get things, into the cloud? This is whole next level. This is how do we ensure that, we don't become the blockbuster that goes out of date? How do we take maybe a Netflix that was a CD company to become a streaming company? How do we take Disney and make it, a Disney Plus company? Like every business is figuring out that massive step change for their business over the next couple of years. And it's all about the people that are going to execute that plan, which is HR. So I just think it's a really, really exciting time to be in HR. And the strategic part that we all started to see happen in COVID, where if you don't have workers working, you don't have a business. So HR got a seat at the table. But as we've seen a little bit of the power dynamics go back to the company and a little bit less in the individual's hands, I think HR is struggling to really keep that seat at the table and to, especially with some of the DEI stuff, like I think there's a bit of an opportunity to say, hey, we can actually we're one of the most important executives at the table to transform this business. Let us be part of this strategy and let us ensure that this is happening. So I just think it's really exciting time in the industry. And that's where culture really, I think, is one of those tools in the toolkit to help with that transformative strategy. And I'm looking forward to doubling down our efforts there.
Yeah, 100%. I right back to what I said. It's either from an HR's perspective, is this going to happen to you or is this happening through you? Is this transformation something that you're part of leading, or is it something that you're going to learn about when it's too late? And that's, I think I agree with you. I've seen a lot of the tools that I see. It's very incremental and sort of taking the old process and automating some things. And I think getting out of the box and thinking, okay, clean slate, how do we get to these outcomes and how do we leap ahead in this market? So that really resonated with me. So, well, I could talk to you all day about this stuff, and I really appreciate your time today, Caitlin. Thank you for being here and talking about everything that's new at Plum and what you're seeing in the market. Thank you so much.
Thank you, George. I always love talking to you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And we should probably get your website out there. Where can folks go to learn more?
So it's plum.io, and you can go ahead and complete your own Plum profile, join the 50,000 people a month that complete their Plum profile and share it on LinkedIn. And, if you've got kids that are trying to navigate this workforce craziness and feeling like their applications are being lost in the void and they're trying to figure out their place, it's a really great tool for them to also complete it and share their Plum profile as part of what helping them stand out. So yeah, plum.io, and you can complete your own free Plum profile.
Awesome. Caitlin, thanks again. And thanks to everyone, wherever you're watching or listening on the new Work Define Network or at oneworktech.com. And until next time, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Work Tech Podcast. Visit us at oneworktech.com and find out why Work Tech is considered the most trusted source of market intelligence and strategic advice for work tech. Subscribe to the Work Tech YouTube channel for video episodes and exclusive content. And be sure to check out the entire Work Defined podcast network at wrkdefine.com for more podcasts on the world of work.